Thank you very much. And good morning, Carl and Frank, and ladies and gentlemen. I'm very sorry that I cannot join you in person. I'm now still in Japan, but I am very much honored to present my case to you as a keynote speaker in this very interesting conference of ICCF. I was executive director at the IEA between 2007 and 2011. IEA was created in 1974 at the first oil shock or oil crisis, when the Arab embargo of oil hit the world and oil price went high, and all the countries are panicked. The consuming countries were panicked by this event and created the IEA, International Energy Agency, to prepare for the oil supply disruption. In fact, it happened a couple of times in the world. And the first one is in the 1991 in the Gulf War, and the second in the Hurricane Katrina in 2005, and 2011 at Libyan crisis. But most recently, because of the Russian invasion to Ukraine, IEA released twice in succession in the historically the largest release of strategic stocks in April and May. The IEA current executive director, Fatih Birol, in this picture, he said, we are in the middle of the first global energy crisis. Current crisis is modern oil crisis. It covers gas, coal, and also, in a way, renewable energy or nuclear energy, because all the energy are related each other. For example, this chart shows you in the vertical axis as the reliance on the gas import, and horizontal axis is import reliance on oil. So the blue area, the countries are importing both oil and gas, while green area, the countries are exporting oil and gas. China currently import about 60% of oil and 40% of gas. But in the future, it imports 80% of oil and 50% of gas. India moves the same direction. Europe is moving upward, increasing the gas importation, while Japan, Korea stuck in the top right-hand side corner because we are importing 100% of oil and gas, but it can never be worse. While the United States moved the other way around, thanks to the shale oil and gas revolution, the United States is already the exporter of gas and soon be the exporter of oil, and joining as energy independence, kind of with Russia or Saudi Arabia. They are heavily dependent on fossil fuel for the energy independence. Those countries importing try to reduce the dependency on the fossil fuel by using the nuclear power or renewable energy. China, Europe, India are using hell of a renewable energy, but this is not for global climate change mitigation. This is their own national security or energy security. Germany is now in trouble, facing the challenge from Russia. Their import is of natural gas is 46%, about half of their domestic demand. And Europe as a whole import natural gas less than that, but Germany is worst hit by the threat of gas exportation damage or blockage from Russia. This is because the Germans' decision of phasing out nuclear power together with the coal and their reliance on natural gas with critical problems at the current juncture. But the biggest shock may come. About a year ago, IEA released this net zero by 2050 publication. When the countries decide to reach net zero carbon emission by 2050, what would happen to fossil fuel production? Already coal is hit its peak of production, while oil has peaked its production at 2019 and gradually shifting down. Gas is not yet peaked, but soon come the peak. So hearing but with conclusion of this analysis, the IEA said the energy group must stop all new oil and gas exploration projects from this year. And this caused the panic in the oil producing country or oil producers. So I call it, this is the first IEA shock to the oil producers. And this will be much, much larger than the current first global energy crisis. And important thing is that the first oil shock was caused or triggered by the supply side, but the future climate crisis are driven by the demand side. Already mega tech firms like Apple or Amazon or Google has decided to go carbon neutral by 2030, much, much earlier than 2050, as many governments committed. So they urge all the supply chain companies to these mega tech firms should do the same. So Sony of Japan should go carbon neutral by 2030 if Sony wants to remain in the supply chain for Apple. The same thing is now happening to the automobile sector. Mercedes-Benz say that they will go carbon neutral by 2039. So the European steel company must now produce green steel or carbon-free steel for these car companies. The financial sector is also pushing for the SDG or ESG investment. So this demand side driven energy transformation is the feature for the future. To achieve carbon neutrality, we need all technologies. Half of them are already in the market, but other half are not yet in the market. Small modular reactors, hydrogen-based steel, direct air capture, advanced batteries. Cold fusion is not yet here. Still, we think It is in the science, but who knows? New technologies, innovations are coming without beyond our imagination. Yes, to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, aiming at 1.5 degrees Celsius increase, we still have to do a lot. IEA announced at the COP26 at Glasgow, the commitment will push us to the 1.8 degrees Celsius containment, but we have to do much, much more. One of the area we have problem is industrial side. The demand for fossil fuel in industry, like heavy industry like steel, petrochemical, and also in the thermal power plant, like coal power plant, will not easily disappear, because in emerging Asia, the power plants or steel or chemical plants are very new relative to the rest of the world. So reducing carbon emission from these sectors may take much more time than transportation sector. So hydrogen may play a very, very important role to mitigate the carbon emission from these hard to abate sectors. IEA released the Future of Hydrogen report some time ago, because hydrogen can increase the generation of renewables by providing the storage. It will help, as I said, decarbonize hard to abate sectors like steel or chemical. And also it contributes energy security by providing an additional importation of fuel, and also save the problem for oil and gas producing companies by avoiding stranded assetization of these resources. Saudi Aramco is now thinking about using hydrogen from their oil or gas, and together with carbon capture and sequestration, exporting so-called blue hydrogen. This is Japan's energy path, which is announced 2 years ago to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. And the lower segment say that power sector will totally be carbon free by 2050 using renewables and also hydrogen or ammonia. And industrial sector will use this electricity for reducing thermal fuels by also hydrogen or methanation, etc. To achieve this, the METI announced Green Growth Strategy toward 2050 carbon neutrality. There are many areas they want to use hydrogen in the 14 priority fields, not only in the thermal power plants or in the fuel cell vehicle. They are thinking of generating hydrogen from nuclear power or also using it in the aviation, port, or etc. Hydrogen, uh, the so-called golden age of hydrogen may come. This is a very interesting application of green ammonia and green hydrogen in the thermal power. The JERA is the joint venture of Tokyo Electric Company and Chubu Electric, and which is the largest procurer of natural gas for thermal power use. But they decided to go carbon neutral by 2050 by using green ammonia and hydrogen. And this model, by co-firing green ammonia and hydrogen. So this co-firing is a very practical and pragmatic way for reducing carbon intensity in the thermal power plant. This can be a very interesting model for the energy transition in many growing Asian economies because their facilities are relatively young and they keep on using these thermal power plants or steel making facilities, and using green ammonia or green hydrogen could be also the great transitional technology for their decarbonization. I learned that there is not only green or blue hydrogen, but turquoise hydrogen technology, because it's using the technology called methane pyrolysis, and an input is gas, but do not use any CCS, and if this technology could be made, can be cheaper way for making the clean hydrogen. And I recently learned from Clean Planet that quantum hydrogen energy could be possible. Cold fusion was dream, but quantum hydrogen technology may provide the way to use hydrogen and fusion together. And this finding is very interesting for me because Mitsubishi Corporation, the largest trading firm of Japan, is now investing Clean Planet. Golden age of hydrogen is coming, still question mark, but Japan is moving. Japan had started importing liquid natural gas 50 years ago by making that liquid natural gas as a possible way of exporting gas from Alaska to Japan. But now Japan is moving, importing clean hydrogen by ammonia or liquid natural gas or methylcyclohexane MCH from all over the world, and creating the supply chain of clean hydrogen. If carbon neutral happens, the trade of fossil fuel or energy could be very different. The left is the current situation. Oil is more than half of the global energy trade. But when the carbon neutrality happens, it's the right-hand side, shows that oil is only 11% of global trade, while critical mineral is very important for batteries, etc. And also hydrogen trade will be 30%, 35%. So stockpile of MCH for hydrogen may be the future strategic stockpile of energy for us. Germany is also moving to following the hydrogen or ammonia. Chancellor Scholz visited Chiyoda Engineering's MCH plant in Kawasaki when he visited Japan 2 months ago. Germany is pushing using hydrogen co-firing in coal or gas turbine and reducing carbon intensity and dependence on Russia. Nuclear may have a bright future in this current juncture. The IEA released the new report on nuclear power and say that nuclear energy could play an important role in energy transition. But nonetheless, by no means the new era of nuclear power is guaranteed, said the Fatih Birol, because to use nuclear power, it is not enough that CO2 emission reduction will happen. To make nuclear energy sustainable, additional conditions needed. The first one is the minimizing risk of accident by small modular reactor or passive safety technology. And second, the radioactive waste disposal should be applied. And these are the European taxonomy is calling for. And third is non-proliferation or proliferation-resistant technologies needed. After Ukraine war, many countries believe now they need nuclear weapon to stop invasion of Russia. So this risk of proliferation is enormous at this moment. So proliferation-resistant technology is needed. I think this integral fast reactor of American origin in the Idaho National Laboratory could be such technology. It can take care of the waste much easier than the current model. Current model of this direct disposal may need 300,000 years of to reduce toxicity. But this technology enables 300 years. 300 is long, but it's much better than 300,000. This technology can be applied to the meltdown debris of Fukushima accident power plant. I calculated it could take $3 billion US, but it's not big. Future of nuclear power, we need flexible nuclear system, which can be small modular reactor and can produce hydrogen and help the more local solution of using much more renewables in the future. Flexibility into the system by the nuclear is another advantage by the small modular reactor. ICEF, Innovation for Cool Earth Forum, which I am the chair, is now discussing about design justice. This is proposed by Aditi Velma, the doctor in the Michigan University. She is saying the current prevailing design of gigawatt scale light water reactor system should be replaced by the emerging design paradigm for small modular micro or nano reactors as off-grid and distributed and community scale source of power by inviting the local participants to the original design of nuclear system. High temperature gas reactor of Japan is a very interesting thermochemical system of producing hydrogen by high temperature. This is the last slide, but ICEF is the International Forum for Innovation for the Cool Earth. So this is proposed by the late Prime Minister Abe, who was very much unfortunately assassinated in the months ago, and I miss him a lot. He invited the many professionals of energy and climate change to this forum to discuss the future of energy transition. But we are now inviting ladies and young people for the discussion because they are the driving force for the global climate mitigation, and they will create their future for themselves. Aditi Belmont, she is in the middle of the down, let's say, part. She is the proposer. She is proposing the so-called design justice. In the upper part, the Rena Kawasaki, she is the CFO of company called Ugrena, the very famous renewable energy company. She is 16 years old, high school girl, but she is the chief future officer of this company. So these young people are now changing the real business and contributing. I hope that there are many young participants to this ICFF this year, and I really wish the great success for these young people to change the energy world of the future, because I strongly believe that to address these global issues, we need global leaders with global identity. Thank you very much for your attention.